Hello, I'm Ben.
And I'm Maya.
And this is the It Takes Two podcast. Today, we are very excited because we are joined by the one and only Lucy Hind, who we have been lucky enough to have as a movement teacher this year whilst training at Leeds Conservatoire.
Yes, but she's not just a movement teacher. Lucy, hello.
Hello, both of you.
Please tell us a bit about yourself.
Oh, well, I would define in terms of job titles, I would say I am first and foremost a movement director. Mm-hmm. And then more recently, in the last sort of 5 years, maybe 7 years, I've started becoming a choreographer. And I think I've always made choreography, but that particular job title has been reserved really for kind of musicals and traditional choreographers. Mm-hmm. But with the development of musicals and the different types of works that have been made, that work has become available to me. And I think I've sort of tried to make my place and my style more recognizable in the industry, and I think I've sort of earned a little bit of that job title, but I still get a little nervous calling myself a choreographer because what I do I feel like expands to body coaching and scene changes and abstract work as well, so that's why movement director feels more encompassing. Right. And also more recently I've trained as an intimacy director, which is very exciting.
Yeah. When was the first time you thought, okay, I'm a recognisable choreographer, movement director, when you get that title and you feel, okay,
Good question. I don't know if there's because it's incrementally grows, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I don't think there's a moment where you go, oh, I feel like I'm a proper one today. I don't think you ever stop feeling that you're not proper. Mm-hmm. I do know that when you get a job like where you get your name on the outside of a building, that's pretty nice. Mm-hmm. And that happened the first time at the Old Vic when I did the first Girl from the North Country. It's a type of building that puts names on the outside, and I suppose that's a particular level, isn't it? But I think the first time you get paid for a job and you get a credit in the program is very special. Mm-hmm. And I think probably my first job was at the West Yorkshire Playhouse, first credited as movement director job. West Yorkshire Playhouse, I did a play called The Year of the Rat, and there was a tiny little dance in it. Hugo Spear was in it. Okay. And I did it as a tiny little waltz or something, or a foxtrot, but I got a little credit, and I think I got paid, I don't know, a few £100s. I was over the moon.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's like, I've made it. And then, of course, you get different levels. There's something about somebody saying to me, you're a Broadway choreographer now. And I was like, shut up.
Been to the Tony Awards.
I'm not, but that still feels amazing as well. Yeah. You have those milestones. But when I started, I didn't think I'd ever be, my type of work was never Broadway choreography. That was not, I was like, one day I'm going to aim to be that.
Yes.
I still feel like I got lucky with a particular show, that there was a place in the industry for that show to exist that made it possible for someone like me.
Yeah, well, why don't we take it back to Girl from the North Country then?
Yeah.
I remember hearing about this show on the Olivier Awards, actually, when Sheila Tim sang.
I heard it from my nan.
Really?
Your nan's so hip now.
Yeah.
She was telling me about it.
But I remember seeing that and then being distraught because I'd missed it.
Oh,
and then it came around the second time round and I was so excited. But what was the process of getting involved with that? And I don't know if that can be seen as one of the first ways of getting in with everything. Yeah. But how was that as a process?
I mean, that particular show has been completely life-changing for me. And I think you always hope you're going to get that one show that will launch your career. But getting the job itself was, my career's been so random in terms of this. And I think most people will say their career's been random. You haven't set a path. But I wouldn't normally have been considered for musicals before, and I did a job at the Old Vic, which was a one-woman Beckett show, and I was a movement director on that, and it was just kind of coached her through some stuff. There wasn't tons for me to do on it, but it established a relationship at the Old Vic. Mm-hmm. So then when this job came about, they knew they needed a particular type, and the Old Vic makes very traditional, very good musicals, Groundhog Day, and Matthew Waters is a fantastic director, and there really were loads of choreographers to make those shows, but clearly they wanted someone who maybe was a bit different, and they hooked me up with a phone call with Connor. Connor had never directed a musical before, so had never worked with a choreographer, and we just hit it off. And on that one, maybe 15-minute phone call, I got the job. Wow. I didn't have a show reel. He didn't see any of my work. It was just that moment where we just went, well, shall we try? Because we had no idea what it was going to be. Mm-hmm. That's how I got it, and then we just remade it and remade it and remade it and remade it. And we just got lucky. Yeah.
I know.
What's it like working on a new show that's not been made? And
it's my favorite. I mean, I like, something like Billy Elliot was so exciting, but that is so cool and terrifying. But I think it allows you to go and, Connor's got an amazing phrase he uses, which is, we'll know it when we see it. Okay. And I feel like that is the thing that I take into all my work now, is not arriving going, I've decided what this is. You put something in a space with those actors in that moment in time, culturally, socially, politically, and with whatever styles are around, whatever's in the fabric of people's social media, and you put it and you either go, that feels right for this story, for these characters, that those steps, those shapes, that tone, or you just have to know deep down where it just isn't. Mm-hmm. Because you have a whole world of something. I mean, sometimes the music will say, oh, this is very clearly this style. But also you can always flip that on its head. And I think what was great as well as the show progressed is we'd make something and then we'd make the rest of the show and then come back to the thing we made in the first week and go, that doesn't fit in this show anymore. Yeah. And that's the great thing you can do with new shows as well, is you can just go, we'll just change it.
Yeah. I suppose like when you're choreographing something like that, you draw on lots of different influences as well as having your own style of what you do. Where do you get your influences from?
Good question. I think you've always got the stuff that you grew up with and you love that maybe you consciously or subconsciously put in. So obviously Fosse and the kind of stuff that for me is alternative.
Yeah.
But also I trained in contemporary dance, so I've got this kind of like abstract contemporary physical theatre Labany background, and then also I did lots of mime and Lecoq and Goulier kind of French European training about storytelling. And also I grew up in South Africa and I trained in South Africa. We have 11 official languages. And the type of work we make post-apartheid is about accessibility for everybody in the country, so it's very physical. We rely heavily on physical storytelling. So, and whether that's, very classic mime stuff, or whether it's abstract worlds which are based in a world of kind of folklore and African traditions, or abstract world of not necessarily giving answers, but it's about feelings. I think that's where my work comes from, is knowing that movement does the work that you can't do with words. Movement is the feeling stuff. And I always hold true to that. I hate movement for movement's sake. I hate steps for steps' sake. It's always got to make us feel something, or move the story forward, or tell us a little secret about a character.
Yeah, that's lovely.
So in South Africa, was musical theatre not really around?
Do you know, it is absolutely, because of course we've got the hangover from colonialism and apartheid. So we have there's a lot of kind of white European stuff. We've got orchestras and ballets and musicals, but it's very elite. And it's a particular theatres. But now that stuff is like, it's old age and it's been redeveloped and rewritten, and you've got contemporized African influences that are changing the way musicals are done and stuff, which is great. Like to have those influences making those stories up to date and stuff. But that work of course still exists because there's still a small audience for it, and also that audience has money.
Yeah. I wanted to ask about your choreography technique and how you work. I always find it confusing when someone comes in and has an idea of what they want to do, how they've thought that's going to happen, especially if there's loads of different things going on and people walking all over the place. How do you map that out?
It's one of my favorite things, like the problem solving of it. So there's two different things for me. There's like the macro choreography, and this is just terms I've made up, right? This is just stuff I've made up. For me in my head, there's the staging, which I do lots of different ways. I either just draw endless pictures on my iPad with little crosses, like storyboard. So actually somebody once suggested I should get a film storyboard notebook, and I did that for a while. It was really useful. So beat by beat, bar by bar, I storyboarded it. The amount of work that is wasn't that useful to me. So then I started doing it on an iPad, and I could scribble it around. And then, sometimes I use, if there's lots of people, and especially if it's like I have to know where the story is, the focus is, I'll use like buttons or pieces of paper that I can go, right, that's where the lead characters are. Otherwise everybody just becomes a button. So there's the macro of that, and then the micro for me are the moves. So like, okay, then phrase, what are people actually doing in this? What I then do, just for my head, is I usually work with lyrics then, and I'll be like, this line is phrase A, and then in my notebook I've worked out the choreography and the counts for phrase A, and it's all color coded. So then I stand up and I go, right, we're doing phrase A here, phrase B here, we then skip to F. You guys go back and do phrase A, you know, and I have to hold it in my head somehow. I don't know how other people do it.
No.
That's how I do it.
Yeah, that's cool. And then I know working with you in classes, there's an element of like seeing what you're offered and working with that.
Yeah.
Do you have a preference of you know, working with specific people, what they're going to bring to the table instead of what you already think?
If I had my way and we had tons of time and money to make shows, I wouldn't choreograph any of it outside of the room. Because that's me standing in a studio finding moves that I like in a mirror that I think look good. And it's such an unsatisfying process for me. What I would always rather do is be with a company and be working with story and intention and moves and music and seeing how different bodies interpret that. And quite often I will do something at home or in a studio and bring it into a room, and then the actors do it and I'm like, oh no, what was I thinking? But time doesn't permit, so I have to do a balance. I do a large amount of prep work, which again is about finding phrases. So what I'll do is I'll come in with like, you know, pages of 8 counts, random 8 counts,
right,
that aren't necessarily in an order. Time is always an issue, but if I have actors who are happy to jump on board and happy to bring stuff of themselves, I can go, yes, let's use that, let's move that here. Thank you for that. It also depends on the show.
Yeah.
You know, more traditional musics have such tight structure and phrasing that they tell you what to do. Whereas something like Angry Dance that we could just pull apart and go, we've no idea, this could be anything, and Billy Elliot, you know, and we have to move away from what it was traditionally. It can't be tap, it's got to feel like it's story-led and naturalistic-led, and I had to use the boys to make that because I'm not an 11-year-old boy.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Speaking of Billy Elliot, could you tell us more about that experience, working on a show that's quite well-known and having to kind of turn it around?
Yeah.
And
The first time to remake a show that's so iconic, with such iconic choreography.
Definitely.
Yeah, there were definitely days where I was like, who do I think I am? Why did I take this job? Yeah, it was really hard. It was really hard, but also it was, I think, one of the, when I looked back on it, like, I learned so much. I think, again, time was a factor. I think I had to really butt up against the ways I knew I could flourish as a choreographer and try and fit that into a system that was COVID, very expensive to make a very big show. The schedule of working with children is a young company is incredibly hard. You only get them from a certain number of hours a day, and our Billies, and we cast real kids. Yeah. So then they were all different. So I made 4 versions of Electricity.
Wow.
I made 2 different versions of Angry Dance that 2 of them did, and the other 2, because I wanted them to shine and be able to be the best that they could be in terms of their ability to tell their story through movement. But I also had to make sure that some of them could do the moves and still look good. We couldn't have a weaker version. Yeah. We couldn't have a B team and an A team. We had to have a team that each brought whatever they could do. So yeah, it was amazing. I had an incredible team. The team had to expand as time went on as well. Wow. We had to get a second associate assistant choreographer because we just ran out of time. Yeah, it was hard. And also some of the actors in those worlds want to be told what to do. They just want the choreography. Yeah. And that's what they're used to, and it's where they excel. And those were struggles as well, as going, you need to just trust me that we'll find it together. And that was hard. There's an element of trust of working with a movement director who works like I do, which I have to accept can feel very unnerving, where I go, that's you won't see it for a while. Yeah. You need to trust me. And I need to remind myself of that as well. Yeah. Because I sometimes get the fear and then I go, no, it's fine. I always feel like this.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think you always feel pressure on a job?
Yes, no matter how long you have.
Yeah.
Of course, because our work is ultimately determined by people coming to see it and having an opinion about it. And our work costs money, and it is such a privilege to work. Yeah. It is a privilege to work because there's not a lot of work, and it is a privilege to work because it is such joyful, fulfilling work. And we are so lucky to do what we do. And every day, you just don't want to mess that up, man. And also, you're aware that your next job relies on this job.
Yeah. Another show I've seen of yours, which was one of the best experiences I've ever had, was The Last Ship in Newcastle.
Oh, bless you. I love that show.
Yes, it was like, I mean, we have a family connection with Sting. I don't want to go into that now.
Throw that in there.
You know, I was obviously brought along to see The Last Ship, not knowing anything about it, and it was one of the best things I've ever seen. And I do specifically remember a clog dance down on stage, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and really connecting that with that. What's it like working on something that's so regional?
Yeah.
Especially somewhere that you're not from.
Good. Yeah, good question. I mean, I had to learn to clog dance.
Yeah.
And I remember saying what we wanted was something that could sit within. So again, it's going, right, these are shipyard workers.
Mm-hmm.
This is a play about real people in a real situation, but it's a musical. And again, I'm not your choreographer who comes in and goes, doesn't matter musical, put some tap in. And like the struggle is like, how do I make this real?
Yeah.
So in listening to the music, it had this lovely folky, it's a gorgeous folky album, but also the sounds of the shipyard, and also what is that culture when these people go out and dance, and these people socially, what do they do? In hindsight, no one goes out clog dance, right?
Well,
that was my heightened version.
Yeah.
I know. I remember saying to Sting, like, I was gonna put some clog dance in, and he was like, huh?
I love that though, just saying to Sting, just talking to Sting.
2 weeks of rehearsals, he came up to me and went, you're gonna have to talk to me at one point, because I was so intimidated.
Yeah.
It was lovely, so lovely. But yeah, I was like, I need an equivalent that is like a stomp or that sits in the ground. So yes, I did have some clog lessons. Loads that didn't make it into the show because actually it was like it took it to a place which didn't feel real. And I know musicals are not real, but we were treading that line all the time with that show of going, we need to keep it feeling like there's loss, and they can't be saved by the songs. The story has to save them. The songs are outlets of feeling. So yeah, a little bit of clog.
Yeah.
It was fun. I watched lots of videos of the Unthanks.
Oh yes,
who are mates of Sting actually.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, that was such a cool show. I mean, when I went to see it, I don't think it was on for that long, and it's a very small theatre. Yeah. How do you feel about? I mean, another show that I've seen of yours, not seen them all, which was Light in the Piazza.
Yeah, very different.
That was one of the biggest places I've ever been in. Yeah. The contrast. What do you feel like when it's only a small audience every night and only show? Do you?
Of course, because there's an intimacy and a community there. The thing about of course, a big roaring South Bank audience, that you can't beat it. Yeah. But you are slightly, it does feel like you're lost up there. And even, Broadway theatres are tiny. West End theatres are tiny. I love them. I love that sense of being in a little home where we go in. It's like spiritual. It's like going to church. Yeah. And there is something about theatre which is spiritual. It's about community, and it's about taking us somewhere else, and it's about believing in something and wanting something to feel better, or a cathartic experience. That's why we go to church. That's why we join religion. Yeah. Community, forgiveness, pain, hope, and that's what theatre is. And a smaller space allows us to be a community.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, but always say that as well. I much prefer a smaller theatre, like the big tour, like the Leeds Grand. Like, it's just too big. I just like the intimacy of a show.
And some people don't. Like, you go and see. I saw Lizzo at Manchester Arena the other day. There was community there. Tens of thousands of people. I think it's just the type of work I like to make has tiny detail and nuance, and I think that gets lost.
So obviously, Girl from the North Country went to Broadway. That's pretty incredible. How much input did you have on that?
Oh, I mean, the creative team go and do everything. I feel really lucky. We're a really close team. The producers are amazing, and Connor is such a generous and connected director. I feel like I was the youngest member of that creative team. We've got Ray Smith, designer, multiple award winning. We've got Mark Henderson on lighting, multiple award winning. Simon Hale and Simon Baker orchestrating and sound, multiple award winning. Then there's me, the little wild card from South Africa. And it was great is in all those moments, like when we told we were going to Broadway, I remember sitting upstairs in the bar at the Public, which is where we did it before it went to Broadway. Right. And we'd just been, so the reviews come out, and if your reviews are good, you literally find out that night if it's transferring to Broadway. Wow. As the creative team. So they were like, come upstairs, we've got an announcement. Like, well done, your reviews are great. We're going to put money in. You're going to go to Broadway. Don't know when, but we're going to try and make it happen. And I remember just sitting there being so overwhelmed, going, what does this mean? I'm really scared. I'm really excited. And just to be sitting with them all. They're all parents. They all also exist in the real world. It's quite easy to get caught in the Broadway-ness of Broadway. And actually what they did is they were like, it's amazing, but also it's just Broadway. Yeah. And they were so good at keeping it feeling real and also excited. Like they also get giddy about it.
Yeah.
But also keeping it safe.
Yeah.
It can be overwhelming. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And a lot of risk and a lot of big producers and a lot of TV and a lot of press junkets, and it's quite overwhelming.
Yeah, I know. I mean, mentioning something like the Tony Awards, that kind of thing is. And I was just going to ask you about that experience, about how different it is. You're putting on a show, and then all of a sudden it's all focused on for one night in Radio City, in Music Hall. You know.
Huge. I mean, the difference between that and the Oliviers were great, and we kind of turned up on the day and we knew Sheila was going to sing her song, and then we were like, well, let's just do a little something on the back that I literally staged on the day before the Oliviers. Like, who have we got? Don't do the choreography. Why don't you just come on? That looks beautiful. Great. The Tonys, we rehearsed for weeks.
Right,
Plus, I re-choreographed it about 5 times because it's for camera, and I loved it. And Connor's a really good telly director as well, so we looked at like how we could make it work because it has such an enormous TV audience that we collaborated with the TV director and Connor and I was like, what if the camera moves literally is on stage and goes through the cast? So I re-choreographed new moves for the Tony Awards that weren't in the show. So it wasn't just picking it out. You know, we put 2 songs together that weren't together in the show, and with our 2 female nominees so that they could each sing. And then we came out onto the apron as well, down the front, and we knew we were going to be different to everybody else, and we had to stay true to that. But that was like, when I arrived at Radio City, and they handed me a microphone, and I stood in the auditorium at Radio City, and you've got screens everywhere, and you've got people standing in for Samuel L. Jackson, who's going to do the announcement, and like it was like a dream, and I just stood there with the microphone, and actually my very dear friend took a picture of me, which I'm so grateful for, but I remember just standing there and being like, hello, Radio City! And the actors were on stage, and it's a very dreamy experience. But I think only dreamy if you go with a company who has that love and that respect and that groundedness. I feel like you could get swallowed up by it.
Definitely. And I suppose because the show itself isn't big and flashy, and it's so opposite to what the Tonys sometimes come across as.
Absolutely.
You know, staying true to that. I suppose if I was in your position, I'd feel like a lovely, like, oh, this is my group, you know. Don't want to share it with anyone else. Yeah, definitely.
Did you get to meet like some incredible people there?
Yeah, I mean, the incredible people always turn out to be that, you know, you get to meet some big names, and that's great, but the incredible people turn out to be the ones who are your family through those moments, you know, and some of those actors and everything they went through with COVID, and we opened 3 times on Broadway because of COVID, and that resilience it takes to get back up and do it again and start it again, in and out, and the theatre was held in like this little dusty time capsule. When we came back, they creaked open the door again. The music of the last page of the last night of the last show we did was still on the stands of the musicians, covered with dust, you know. Months and months and months come back, and their costumes are still, like, they thought they were coming back the next day. And that resilience took. But yeah, they're members of that company who we got so lucky with our cast, and we had this incredible green room, and we had big plans that we had painted a wall that everybody famous who came backstage would sign their name on our wall and stuff, but we didn't get to do that because of COVID. But yeah, did get to meet some very cool people.
Speaking of that little green room thing, do you have any sort of like rituals or traditions that you do before you do anything?
That's a good question. Do you know what, they do this in America, which is really great, is setting up like a good little base for tech. And I've never done that before. I've never like insisted on, I want a table and I want a little place that I can have my stuff. Because tech can feel very discombobulating. Because a director has their place, but choreographers over here don't tend to like ask for a spot. And actually I do now, and it keeps me really grounded, and I've got my stuff, because directors, actors have their dressing rooms, and we just float for tech and previews. So I do like to set up a little place. In terms of pre-show rituals, not really, because I'm just full. My brain's full. I'm running around giving notes. But I like to check in on every actor at all their dressing rooms before previews.
Oh, that's nice.
As well. And we always write press night cards and things. They've got good Broadway traditions.
Really?
Very good Broadway traditions. Yeah, they have a coat, like this big, I think quite un-PC, it's called a gypsy coat, but it's this beautiful big like cloak, which on your opening night, the head or the oldest standing ensemble member, so the person who's had the most shows, who's in the ensemble, like daddy of the ensemble, the mommy of the ensemble, brings the coat to your theatre. They run it across town, and then the oldest standing member of your ensemble receives it and wears the coat, and then everybody's on stage and walks on, everybody touches it, and then it must go to every dressing room and everybody touches it, and then you keep it until the next Broadway show opens and it gets taken to there. And it's such a beautiful, again, religion.
Definitely.
Is it quite different sort of Broadway to West End UK? Like, is there a big difference? Or?
Yeah, there is a huge difference, and I do think it's to do with money.
Yeah.
I think the cost and the risk is higher. The traditions are higher. The shininess is therefore bigger. But I love the West End as well. I love it because it's got its beautiful traditions and it's of course the prestige and all that, but also the community and everything is great. Yeah, it's special, beautiful old theatres.
Yeah. Well, having said all that, why don't we just talk about like fun things? What's your favourite musical?
Oh my gosh!
We ask every guest.
And I should have known that you were going to ask that. My favourite musical. I tell you what, a musical that I come back to a lot and I've only seen once is Come From Away. And I listened to the album loads before I saw the show. And I feel like it's so simple in its storytelling. I love the kind of half-spoken, half-sung nature of it, the kind of, all sung really, nature of it. And I love the staging, I love the choreography, the kind of all the chairs and everything. It just feels very me. I just found it really, really, really moving. And music-wise, I mean, Light in the Piazzas.
Yes.
It's incredible musically. And I'm not a very traditional musicals fan, but my God. And then the very first musical I ever saw on the West End, I wanted to change my life, as I came to England when I was about 10 and I saw Cats.
Oh, wow.
And I remember thinking, Cats and Starlight Express, but Cats, I said to my mum, I'm going to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a big dance show as well.
know.
Yeah.
Did you first have visions of being a performer, being in the shows?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can't sing.
Okay.
It's a shame. I thought I was going to be Belle in Beauty and the Beast.
That would be lovely.
I mean, I'm a choir singer, but nothing. I couldn't do it. But also, I think I'm just not built for that. You know, I'm not built for the life of it. But there are other things that I do that I love now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely was going to be on stage.
Yeah. Wow.
That was lovely.
Thank you very much, Lucy.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, really appreciate it. We've been trying to set this up for a long time, and thank heavens we've actually done it.
I'm so pleased. I think you both are brilliant, and your enthusiasm and love for it is. I think we're sometimes like we worry about trying to be too like cool, and I think we can't. This industry survives with passion and love, and I love these podcasts where people just talk about how much we love things.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's nice that we have that just to remember why we do it and not get lost in the stress of uni. And
exactly. Yeah, why you do it and why you will do it and continue to do it. Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you so much.
You're
I really
welcome.
appreciate it. As always, I've been Ben.
I've been Maya.
And this has been the It Takes Two podcast.